Tight as we suspected it might. At the moment, there is a swing, a projected swing, according to Anthony Green, of just over 4%. Of course, Labor holds this seat by just over 6%. So, yes, it is looking very close, but we're waiting for more results to come through. And in particular, those pre-poll and postal votes, which we may not see for some time yet. Let's go to Anthony Green for the latest numbers. Anthony, what are they telling us?
We have 11 polling places in now, and we've now got 12 in. The Labor Party's on 42, the Liberal Party on 39. So there's a 3% gap there. Labor rarely ever gets beaten nowadays. In the last 30 years, has rarely been beaten when it's ahead on first preferences. At the moment, we're projecting them to be ahead on first preferences. That doesn't account, maybe there's a different trend on pre-polls and postals. But Labor's ahead on first preferences. They're only getting about 60% of preferences this time, where they got about 65 at the last federal election, mainly because the Green vote is well down. There's a couple of other parties, the Animal Justice Party and the Victorian Socialists are down there. Their preferences will probably flow to Labor to an extent. The Independent and the Libertarians will flow to the Liberal Party. Anyway, the change in vote that's occurring is you're seeing both major parties up. Labor's up nearly 3%, the Liberals up 6%. Both of those are gaining at the expense of Greens, nearly 6 down, and others nearly 3% down. So that's what's going on there. If you look at the two-party preferred swing, which we now have from 6 polling places, and that swing is at 4.3%, which at this stage isn't going to tip the electorate over. So at the moment, a 4%, 3% swing. As I said, the average over a century is 4%. Maybe we're going to see that again. But at the moment, the Labor Party is ahead. And we've got those two-party preferreds. The map will still be the same polling places that I had a few minutes ago. But again, we're seeing that Liberal vote in the south where you would expect it, and Labor holding the booths to the north. So at the moment, Labor's got its nose in front, I'd say.
Yeah, Anthony, look, thank you, and we'll come back to you. But just to underline the point Anthony was making there, the Green vote is down substantially. The Greens are telling me they're not worried about this. This always happens at by-elections. They do better at a general national election.
Adam Bandt, who's the leader, hasn't even visited the electorate.
And you've got these other parties that weren't running at the election in 22, the Dems, the Victorian Socialists, so that left vote is spraying around a little bit amongst all of them. Anyway, whether that flows back to Labor is the key here, cause, isn't it? Because they're going to need all those preferences if the Greens vote is down. But at the moment, Labor's, we're yet to see more out of Carrum Downs, which is the critical part of the electorate in the north that we're waiting for. But at the moment, that swing is not looking like enough to tip them out.
I've mentioned that all the planets need to align for Dutton to win this, and it doesn't seem to be the case at the moment. So the primary vote swing is not large enough. It doesn't look like they're getting that 10,000 primary votes that they need. And so it looks pretty difficult to see how they're going to get there. They'll have to have a really good turn on the postal votes. It is still tight.
And that's what we don't know. Yeah. There's, every election there's an increasing number of pre-polls. Yeah. Particularly big pre-poll this time?
Yes, there is. Yeah, that's
so
right.
We don't know what's in there, and the postal votes as well typically favour the Conservatives.
Typically.
They favoured, didn't they not, Labor last time?
They did, but last time the coalition, or the Liberal Party in particular, was not actually in the field. So we really shouldn't read too much in terms of that. The postals. And it wasn't really a seat that they bench pressed, so to speak. When
they didn't think they could win it at the last
Correct.
election.
They didn't spend any money on it. And so we may see a difference in the early voting patterns.
But from what you can see at the moment,
it's difficult.
You think difficult for the Libs to actually take this seat?
That's right. And just quickly on the Green point. So in the Aston by-election, the Greens had a swing to them of 1-something%.
Okay.
Right. They held their own in that by-election.
Right. So, Tony, just on the broader point though, difficult for the Libs to win from here. What do you think?
Yeah, they've overperformed to date, I think, which is a positive sign. But Labor's primary vote has been very strong, and I think they'll win on the strength of their primary vote. They had a fair bit of fat in their primary vote from last time. 40% is more than enough to win.
Because of the popularity of Peter?
Yep. They could have afforded to drop to 35 and probably still comfortably won, but it looks like they're going to be sticking pretty close to 40.
Is the other point, again, early, we don't know where it's going to land, but are the tax cuts the tax cut changes saving Labor, do you think, tonight, where it counts in those working class booths?
Yes, I think it's given Albanese something to talk to. He was out of the conversation until that move. And as I said, his message was basically like, vote for me, I'm less hopeless than him, which isn't a particularly persuasive message. So he's got something to talk about, and he's branded it as Labor's tax cut. So I think that's been worth the risk.
And Labor's primary vote has held up. I mean,
Yep.
that's what all Labor people are saying
without
to
the tax
me,
cuts.
that it's been actually quite significant, the fact that, you know, in a by-election usually you'd see a stronger swing against a government, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, there's still 50,000 votes out in the wild, 29,000 pre-poll and 21,000 postal. We know that Labor didn't get their postal campaign out until very late in the campaign. And as Cos said, the Liberal Party didn't have Dunkley in their marginal seats program in the last general election, so it didn't get the platinum treatment of a postal vote campaign. So, look, you know, if Liberals perform very strongly in PVAs, there could be a better result.
Let's go straight to the ABC's chief election analyst, Anthony Green. Now, Anthony, what can you tell us?
Well, we've now got 6 polling places which we can plot. The extra one here is, which one is this? This is Skye, and this one I think is Coringal Central, both returning Labor votes. If you look at the swing that's occurring, I mean, nearly all to the Liberal Party, but there's only 1, 2 which are above the 6.3% swing needed. The other ones are all falling short. So at the moment, it's turning into a swing of about 4-point-something%. On the polling places. Again, we have to wait till later in the evening to find out how the postals and pre-polls, if there is any different trend in those.
Excellent. Thank you, Anthony. And let's bring in Susan Lee, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party now. Susan, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You just heard there Anthony Green's analysis that the swing is unlikely to bring you this win tonight. How is it looking from your perspective? Does it look like you'll fall short?
Well, there's clearly a swing on, and there is a big swing on. What that ends up being remains to be seen, but it's very, very encouraging. And we asked the people of Dunkley to send a clear message to Anthony Albanese, and they have. A clear message that his attitude on cost of living is insufficient to look after the people of Dunkley. That his release of hardened criminals, 149 into the community, has not respected community safety. So we've had an outstanding candidate in Nathan Conroy. It remains to be seen how far we go, but this is an incredibly strong result so far tonight. And you know, I see a lot of election paraphernalia as I walked around the booths today, one which said a vote for Nathan Conroy is a vote for Peter Dutton. Well, yes, I agree. This is a strong endorsement of Peter Dutton and the federal Liberal team, including the federal team here in Victoria that have all done an outstanding job.
But Susan Lee,
no one more outstanding than our candidate.
Peter Dutton's strategy has been about winning the suburbs. We are in a cost of living crisis. No one disputes that. People have been struggling. People are really finding it hard to survive. If you don't win this seat tonight at a time when Australians, particularly in this seat, are struggling, doesn't that demonstrate that this strategy is faltering?
Look, I'm not calling a result. Maybe the ABC is. What I'm saying is so far, this is very encouraging indeed. This is a big swing. This is a strong endorsement of the message that Peter Dutton and I delivered to the people of Dunkley, which was to ask them this question: do you feel any better off than you did when Anthony Albanese became Prime Minister? The answer has clearly been many, many of them do not. Do you trust this Prime Minister when you release 149 hardcore criminals into the community and you don't respect their safety? Do you trust this Prime Minister when your rents are going up, when your grocery prices are going up, when your food prices are going up? So let's see where the evening lands, and there's postals and pre-polls to come. We are encouraged by this strong swing away from this Labor government.
When you say strong swing, if it's less than the average 3.9, is that a bit disappointing?
Well, you're talking about ifs and whats and how much.
So just you're
I'm
talking about a
seeing
strong swing. What do you mean by strong swing? What do you regard that as?
I've been looking at the polls. I've been looking at the polls just as you have. They're bouncing around, and there's big 2-digit swings in some and smaller in others. It's exactly what you would expect. It's early to say, but so far the commentators and the results are showing a strong swing.
What's
Let's
a good
see where it
result?
lands.
What's a good result for the Liberals tonight?
Well, a good result is what we're seeing right now. A community that is saying to Anthony Albanese, we're turning election have not voted Labor tonight. And that is a strong endorsement of the leadership of Peter Dutton and our federal Liberal team here.
So you see a swing that has a 3 in front of it as a strong swing, to be clear?
Well, let's just see where... I'm not going to identify numbers. I'm
Why
not going
not?
to point to results.
Why not?
It's much too early in the night. Because it's much too early in the night to do that. This is a moving feast behind me, as you'll see. We've got a lot of hardworking Liberals in the room. They're looking at the results as they come in. And, there's quite a bit of the night to go. There is quite a bit of the night to go.
You mentioned hardened criminals and the Prime Minister releasing these people into the community. I don't want to get back into the fact that, of course, it was a High Court ruling that led to that sequence of events, but you tweeted something very controversial the other day. Police then withdrew charges of this one individual who had been released. Do you regret that tweet?
Well, let's go back to what this is actually all about. As you said, 149 hardcore criminals were released into the community, and the government had advice early on and did nothing about it, and then activated all of those releases, included 37 sex offenders and multiple violent criminals. Since then, 18 have reoffended and been arrested by state and territory police. I'm not taking a backward step on the need to make sure that this government is held to account when it comes to keeping women and children safe on the street. There are some of those individuals who have offended, allegedly.
So
and
just to
there
be
are more
clear,
who
you
will
don't
be
regret that
rearrested by
tweet
state and territory police.
or that message?
That does not excuse or exonerate the government. What I'm saying is the fact that the Victoria Police actually got the wrong person in one case does not exonerate the government from the need for it to continue to keep our community safe, and not to expect that we would think that 37 sex offenders at large in the community is okay. 2 have allegedly reoffended.
Okay.
One in South Australia, one already in Victoria who had child sex offences to their name. So no, when it comes to protecting women and children from people who the government's own Home Affairs Minister has said she would prefer were all locked up and in detention, no, I won't be taking it back.
Susan Lee, we perhaps will speak to you again later tonight. Thank you for your time and
Yes.
returning to the panel now. Tony, it seems that swing
It's come into
come
about
down?
3.3% now. It's been bouncing around a bit, and we keep stressing it'll keep bouncing around, but it has narrowed down. Now, Susan Lee was talking there about this is a really strong swing. Earlier, it certainly was. But, Tony, right now, it's narrowing.
Yeah, it's mostly being held up by Labor's strong primary vote. But as I said, the postal votes are still to come in. I think we've only got 6 out of 35 booths. So there's still quite a lot of more numbers to come in. I think there's something for both major parties in tonight's result. They've got a combined major party vote of 80%, which, as we discussed earlier in the program, is unusual. It's against the trend. It's been closer to 30%. So there's something for everyone tonight, except the Greens.
There's something for everyone. Let's return to Anthony Green, our Chief Election Analyst. And Anthony, what are the latest figures showing?
Oh, we've got I think we've got 11 or 12, we've got 20 polling places, 22% of the overall vote. The Labor Party is still ahead on first preferences, and we're projecting them to stay ahead at this stage, and they don't lose many from that position, but again, a lot of pre-polls and postals to come. Change in vote, this is reflected in a two-party preferred, which I'll get to in a moment. The Liberal vote primary's up. Some of it has been at the expense of the others. The Green vote is down. I presume some of that's gone to Labor and some Labor votes have gone to the Liberal Party. And that translates into, at the moment, the swing is 2.7%. That's slipped again. So that number's been coming down for a while. And if we look at the results on the map, actually, what I'll do, I'll show the results last time. That's what it looked like at the last federal election. Everything red up there, some blue down the bottom. We've got 10 polling places marked here, and you're seeing the same colour pattern.
Yeah.
So at this stage, the same pattern is repeating. But let's look at the swing. And what you're seeing is we had one swing of 10%, one of 7.8. We've now got 2 polling places with a small swing to Labor, and everything else is sort of under that 6.3% swing. So that's the pattern we're seeing at the moment. Just coming back to this, I wouldn't be confident calling it at this moment because we've got some postal votes coming early this time, which I'm not sure how we're going to arrive.
Well, I was going to ask
count.
you that, Andy. What are you waiting to see? Because I find it really interesting, as you point out, that primary vote for Labor is still ahead of the Libs. Normally that means they win. Are you waiting to see that first batch of pre-poll or postal votes to come in?
I'd like to see that because this projection here, 53.6, that builds in the fact that the federal election, the Labor vote on the day fell 1% to the final result. Now, we saw in the New South Wales election a much bigger gap, is that the gap opened substantially between the two. Now, what I'm interested to see is, we see postal votes have always favoured the Conservative side of politics. Pre-polls tend to slightly favour the Conservative side of politics. The problem is it's not always by the same rate. It tends to vary from election to election. So that's why I'm being cautious. But at the moment, as more polling places has come in, that swing has come down.
Well, just while you're talking, that projected swing's come down, hasn't it? It's now 2.7%.
That's right, yeah. I mean, let's try that again. The figures are constantly updating.
Refresh.
But, yeah. 2.7. It came from 3.3 last time we looked. So it continues to slip down, but whether that will be repeated later in the evening. But I would say if I was the Labor Party, I'd be very encouraged by these numbers at the moment.
Thank you, Anthony, and we will return to you, of course. The Deputy Leader of the Government, the Labor Party, and the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, joins us now. Richard Marles, you were biting your fingernails before. That swing to the Liberals now seems to be a little narrower than it was when we first saw the count. Are you going to hold on tonight?
Look, I think there's still a way to go, and again, that may reflect my natural pessimism as a human. But I think we still need to learn a little bit more in terms of where the preferences flows are going, particularly from those smaller, those minor parties or minor candidates. I do think one thing that has become clear is that our primary vote has held up really well, and that is an enormous tribute to Jodie Bellier. I mean, given how popular Peter Murphy was, she was a fantastic local member. For Jodie to essentially be holding on to that primary vote says a lot about the campaign that she's run. But that she's run. That was a misspeak. So
That's all right. Let me jump in. Looking at.
Do not get ahead of. I'm not ahead of myself. I can assure you.
You're being very careful.
But I think Jodie's done really well.
Looking at where the swings are, that big swing to the Libs early in the night was in Mount Eliza North. Since then, it's been more of a mixed bag. Still like to see more from Carrum Downs, but the one booth we've got in there, Labor's holding up all right. When you look at the breakdown of where these swings are, where Labor's holding on, what do you make of what does this tell you?
Yeah, look, I mean, I can kind of see where that question might go, and people may leap to, how tax cuts play out in various areas. I mean, the honest answer to that question, David, is what we do is go through all of this really forensically when you get every vote in and when you understand where every preference has gone. So I actually still think it's too early to kind of draw those micro results out. But you can do that. Like when the whole thing's said and done, you can absolutely get micro trends which do tell you things about how policies are being received by various demographics, various constituencies, and we're obviously very keen to get that information. I mean, look, there is a swing. We will listen to that. We can talk about the circumstances of by-election, the natural swings against governments and the like, and that's all true. But whatever the result is here, we will be listening very carefully to what's in it for, in terms of what we can learn about how the Australian people see us and how our policies are operating and how we can do better to serve them.
Did your tax cut changes save you tonight, though?
Well, again, people want to draw that conclusion. I think we will get a better sense of how the tax cuts have played out. I mean, you can see from the way in which we campaign that we believe they are a huge positive, and the results that we're seeing so far would seem to, affirm that. But most people are going to be better off by virtue of what we're doing in relation to the tax cuts. But I think most importantly, it absolutely signifies that that in us you've got a government which is fighting for the household budget, and that's what we're seeking to do.
But is it fair to say,
we're
Richard
very
Marles,
confident about that as a policy.
Is it fair to say, Richard Marles, that you're a lot less nervous than you were earlier?
PK, I mean, you know me, so no, it's not fair to say that. I'm still, shifting in my
Still got the beat of
shoes.
sweat running down the
We'll see whether you're feeling more relaxed later. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the right
We'll leave
call.
it there. We'll revisit this conversation. The Deputy Leader, of course, of the Labor Party and the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, not willing to call it because they want to wait for these, postal votes and the pre-polls, but
They want to wait for Andy Green, let's face it, but anyway.
they do. Yeah. We all do. But he did look happier to me, sorry, but the mood of that guy was elate. He was, I think that they think this swing isn't as big as they thought it would be.
Yeah, I'd say the Prime Minister's probably tucking into the birthday cake by now and feeling sort of reasonably confident about his evening and celebrating his birthday. But, there's a few messages in there for Labor in this, and there's a few messages in the Liberal Party for this. So
We'll come to all of those messages. There are many of them, no doubt about that. Let's get back to Gemma Van Ness, though, for a check of what else has been happening. Gemma.
Now we are going to go to our sports news now. Australia has the upper hand at stumps on day 3 in the first test against New Zealand in Wellington. The Aussie batsman struggled in the second innings on a pitch with variable bounce and spin, all out for 164. It was spinner Glenn Phillips who did the damage for New Zealand, taking 5 wickets, including first innings hero Cameron Green. A tense final session saw Nathan Lyon snap up 2 wickets, leaving the Black Caps 3 wickets down, needing 258 for victory. Ireland has claimed a men's test match victory for the first time in their cricketing history with a 6-wicket win over Afghanistan. Irish captain Andy Balbirnie led his side to a triumph with an innings of 58 not out to reach the required total of 111 for victory. Ireland had previously gone 6 years and 7 test matches without tasting success.
Fortunately, we're part of that history now. We've got to play and we've got to win. So I think it's a lot bigger than cricket. Hopefully we'll inspire some people back home to want to be test match cricketers, and hopefully we can back them up to do it.
In Super Rugby Pacific, the Melbourne Rebels managed a huge second half comeback to defeat the Western Force